Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to your Insurance Corner. It is Tuesday, February 1st in the year 2022. And my name is Bill Miksch with WDMA Financial Group. This is 101.5 FM, WLCB Radio, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. We are back live for the next 2 hours to discuss, chat, educate, have fun. There will likely be a grumble moment, although I haven't decided exactly what my grumble is going to be tonight. But trust me, there's 2 hours of a show, so there is a grumble moment coming. Sean is on assignment. He might be in later, so I am running solo for the first time in a while. So please, I'm almost begging, call the radio show. Call the radio show. Don't be afraid. I won't bite. If I know your voice, I won't blow your cover. I promise. But the phone number to call in tonight at area code 262-342-6588 will. All lines are open right now, all one of them. So I'd be honored to take your call. See if you can stump me, or if you got a question. There's a ton of material that we're going to cover again tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We wanted to continue our discussion about retirement planning and planning in general, but we're also going to talk at the beginning of the show. Tonight we're going to talk about transparency billing, no surprise billing. We've kind of talked about it in a little bit of generalities, but I'm going to bring it more to the forefront and make it even more confusing than it already is. And I'll set the table for you in this regard. The transparency pricing is born out of an idea that us as consumers should have a better idea of what things cost. And I'm just going to leave it with that obviously is a rhetorical, well, of course, we want to know what things cost. But as I get into the details, you're going to find out that it's not as easy as it sounds. And there is a lot of work to do before they get this idea to come to fruition. Plus, frankly speaking, it can be complicated, especially if you're in a plan wherein you need certain pieces of information just to get a general idea of what things cost. So that being said, my name is Bill Miksch. I'm with WDMA Financial Group. We are in 14 states around the country. We do life insurance, health insurance, corporate benefits, and fixed indexed annuities, retirement planning, estate planning. That's what we do. I come here every Tuesday night after 31 years of doing this on the pretext that we want to entertain you so that you can chuckle, you can laugh, you can cajole, you can have some aha moments. You can get educated, or as I said to one of my kids on the way over to the show tonight, edumacate you. I begged one of them to come on to the show, and neither one took my bait. I was going to pay them $100 to show up, but they didn't take the bait. So, and if they're listening, it's too bad. The offer's over. But in any case, we want to entertain you. We want to make sure we keep your attention, because this is admittedly can be sometimes difficult. It can be boring. No, I'm not going to mince any words. Insurance is inherently boring. But I can make it fun. I can try to make it interesting. And if I can keep your interest and we can educate you on some basic concepts and you have an idea of what you're looking at, then all the better. So with that in mind, Sean's again is on special assignment. He might be in a little later. I'm not sure if he's going to make it in tonight. He's got some personal things he's handling. But let me start out by first talking about the weather. I don't do the weather very often, but we have a storm coming in to the Chicago metro area that appears to be going to be lasting a couple of days. Not that long ago, the East Coast just got hammered with almost 2 feet of snow in some places. In some places, they're still unbearing themselves out. With this snowstorm coming into the city of the Chicago metro area, which includes all of the collar counties, what I mean by that is you have Chicago, which is the main city, of course, and you've got Cook, Lake, DuPage, Will, Kane, and McHenry counties. Those are considered the collar counties. around the city of Chicago. You also have LaPorte and Lake County in Indiana. That is in the Chicago metro area per se. And this storm is coming from the west and the south and is gaining momentum. And it appears like the central part of the state, Kankakee, well, I shouldn't say Kankakee is not central. It's still north. But certainly Urbana and parts of southern Illinois, Carbondale, Mattoon, Mount Vernon, those kind of cities are likely going to get hammered. If I recall, I seem to remember seeing something on a radar picture yesterday that Urbana might be getting hit with as much as 28 inches of snow. Now, at the same time, I've seen two maps. One suggests that Lake County, which is where we are up in the Round Lake Heights area, is likely to get maybe 3 to 4 inches over the next few days, maybe as much as 6. But I've also seen a map that suggested 13 inches. So as I made a comment to a friend of mine today, it would be nice to be wrong and being able to say 1 inch or 12 inches and still get paid a lot of money to say, we're either going to get 1 or 12, it just depends. I wish we have that much leeway in doing some of the stuff that we do. Had another conversation today. So anyway, that's the weather. So buckle down. Hopefully you've got enough food, water. Your heat and electricity are going to hang tight. It's supposed to start out with rain, and then and the snow is supposed to start sometime in the middle of the night, is my understanding. But stay tuned, stay safe, drive carefully, and give yourself some distance in between the drivers on the road, please. So that's the weather. Here at WLCB 101.5 FM, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. So I had a conversation today with a regional VP of one of the major insurance companies that we represent. I was chatting with him mostly because our sales reps are on maternity leave and my service rep was just terminated. So my default was the regional VP. And I had a nice conversation with him. And one of the things I had made mention to him is the fact that unlike a lot of brokers, while rates are important to our employer clients and certainly our employee clients who have to pay for some of this stuff, and certainly our employer clients who pay a boatload of premium on their employees' behalf, contract is also equally important, particularly when it comes to disability and life insurance. Because most clients don't really understand what they're buying. They look at a price and go, okay, that's a good deal. They expect the broker or the agent to make sure that we have done our homework. And I said to the regional VP, I said, it's important for me to make sure my client knows what it is that they're buying. So I spend time reading the contracts. Yes, I do. I read the contracts. They're boring as all get out. But you got to do that to make sure there's no oh-by-the-way clauses. Because the one thing we know for sure is insurance companies have what are called weasel clauses in their contract. Yes, they do. Sorry, my insurance friends, but they do. And they are things that they're not going to cover, or the oh-by-the-way clause, or the so-called subjective view of the claims rep at the time and maybe how they're feeling that day. And I'm not exaggerating that. After 31 years, I've seen where a claim could be adjudicated based on how somebody feels that day, not whether it's right or wrong. So that in context, I said, it's important to make sure that my clients understand what it is that they're buying, whether it's a life policy, an annuity, a disability contract, a medical plan, a dental plan. All of these things have oh-by-the-way clauses, and it's incumbent upon us as brokers or agents to make sure we know what we're talking about. And I said to him, I can eliminate a pre-existing condition clause in a disability contract. And he said, how do you do that? So I took his bait and I said, well, excuse me, if I do a short-term a short-term disability policy, and the group has to be fairly substantial, 15, 20, 30 people or more, where the employer is paying for the whole thing. So the employer is buying the short-term disability policy for their employees. Short-term disability basically covers 60 to 67% of your income, depending on the structure of the contract. And if the employer's paying for it, it's income taxable. And it can start anywhere from the first day to as many as 30 days before it kicks in. But in this case, I wrote the contract so that it would kick in on the first day for an accident and the 8th day for an illness. Okay? And it's 60% of income, employer paid. And I said, I don't want a pre-existing condition clause in that contract. And the insurance company said, okay. And then I said, then we do a long-term disability policy wherein we have the employee pay for it either as a voluntary plan or what is called gross up. Gross up essentially means that we're going to take the premium that was going to be applied to your policy and gross up your income. And then you're going to pay for it, Mr. Employee, with after-tax dollars. After-tax dollars. The reason for after-tax dollars is so that the benefit is tax-free. And as I continued the conversation, he said, that's brilliant. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never heard anybody do that before. So the point of the discussion is to show that there are some of us that look for outside-the-box kind of programs so that the employee and the employer are equally taken care of, and particularly for disability, we are protecting the most important asset a person has, and it's your income. It's your ability to make a living. It's ability to make money. Because if you don't have money, all the stuff in the world doesn't matter. If you don't have money, living becomes incredibly difficult. So that disability policy, to me, is in some cases more important than the health insurance. Because let's say that you get hurt in a car accident. You may be laid up for 3, 4, 5 months, or possibly forever. If you don't have a disability policy, where do you get your income to be able to pay your bills? And by the way, remember, you're hurt, right? You got sick you got hurt in a car accident, and maybe it was you got hit by somebody who didn't have good auto insurance or didn't have any, irrespective of what the law says. So it's really critical to make sure that those of us that are looking at these contracts dive into the details. And then the last thing I said to him, and this is not an ego thing, ladies and gentlemen, after 30 years, I think I've earned my right to say this. If a sales rep from an insurance company comes into an office, a broker's office like mine, and I know more about their contract than they do, as I've said to some of my sales reps, that's a bad place for you to be. That's a bad place for you in my office. If I know more about your contract than you do, that takes you down from advisor to order taker, and you don't want to be that when you're dealing with a broker who is representing a corporate client who is completely dependent upon, or the employer is dependent upon the broker to make sure they're getting a good deal. So that is not a grumble moment, by the way. It is just factual. That we want to look for things that are beyond just cookie cutter if we can. We want to be creative in our approach. We want to be diligent and respectful of the price point of the client. And we want to make sure that it meets the need for whatever the client is looking for, whether it's for them as an individual or their corporation. So that was a part of the deal and a part of the conversation that I had today. So I wanted to share that with you. So moving along, excuse me, it's 6:15, WLCB 101.5 FM. Remember, our phone number here is area code 262-342-6588. We're happy to take a call on virtually anything that you want to throw at me. I will say, excuse me, I've got this frog in my throat that's been bugging me all day. I apologize. I will say that if you call me on home and auto question, that is not that is not my strength. I may be able to answer generally, but if you get into the weeds, I would suggest that you call your agent or broker. And if you don't have one that you trust, I'm more than happy to turn you on to a friend of mine who I can say very confidently each time I've put them in front of one of my clients, they've saved them money, plugged holes in their policy, and made them in a better place, particularly on the corporate side. So let's talk about transparency billing and no surprise billing. That's what we're going to start off with today, and then we're going to do the second half of the show, ladies and gentlemen, on a continuation of what we ended with last week, which was retirement planning and some of the steps that we want to be paying attention to. We're going to start to touch on what is an annuity, how does an annuity work, how does that compare to an IRA, a 401k, a life insurance policy, or just what's called a non-qualified account, which can be anything that is non-retirement based. So with that said, let's talk about transparency. About 3 or 4 years ago, the federal government, and it's understandable, the federal government was getting pounded across the board. The insurance companies, guys like me, ladies like me, I'm not a lady, obviously, but brokers, agents are getting pounded with how come the costs are going up. It has been a question that I've been raising for 31 years. Just to give some context to this, ladies and gentlemen, I started in the business about 1989, 1990. Back then, we had a single rate for medical coverage for a Blue Cross policy with a $250 deductible, no doctor network, 100% thereafter with a $5 prescription copay card. The rate was $25 a single and $135 a family. Fast forward to the year 2020, the average rate is right around $400 or $500 or more a month, can be much higher depending on how rich your policy is. And for family rates, depending on the demographics of the group, which includes gender, date of birth, how many people are in the plan, how many family units, etc. The family rate is grown gigantically to, in some cases, well over $2,000 a month per family unit. So it is the cost of care has gotten really expensive. So in the context of this transparency, the question was, how does somebody find out what something is going to cost before you go into the hospital or before you go into the doctor? In the old days, you had to get a procedure code, and you could still do this today. Get the procedure code or codes that you are needing to pay attention to. You need to find out who the doctor is. You need to know who, or the provider, what's called their NPI number, their National Provider number, NPI number. You need to have that information. And you need to know the network that you're in, whether it's a PPO or an HMO, and then the price. And with those factors, the insurance company can reasonably tell you what it's going to cost, particularly if you have the doctor. Now, let's say you don't have the doctor's NPI number. You have their name, but you don't have their number. The insurance company may take the high road and say, well, we can't give you that information. I can give you a range, but I can't give you that information because of proprietary rules. And what they're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is protecting the doctors who are the primary audience of the insurance companies. And I understand that. At some level, I get that the doctors don't want to have their incomes broadcast across the blogosphere. But the reality is that once an explanation of benefits is generated, a statement that's generated by the insurance company that says, here's a claim for $5,000, the PPO discount amount was $4,000, the doctor got paid $1,000, it's over. That is now public record information, albeit to me or to a patient, how much that doctor actually made or that provider actually made on a particular service. As an example, and this was a while ago, but I'll use this as an example, I saw an explanation of benefits. This was probably 10 years ago. Person had a kidney transplant. The explanation of benefits said $90,000. That was the gross amount of money that was charged by the physician's charge to do the kidney transplant. The discount, because he was in the network, was $80,000. So he had to write off $80,000 and accepted $10,000 as payment for the kidney transplant. There were two reactions that I had when I first saw that. My first reaction was, this ain't a tonsillectomy, it's a kidney transplant. The doctor should get paid a reasonable amount of money. At the same time, I also asked the same question, why the heck was the doctor signing on to a contract that he knew he would otherwise get $90,000 if he didn't have any insurance and accepted $10,000? Why didn't he just say $10,000? I put that question out there, ladies and gentlemen, because that issue still exists today. Anytime you pick up an explanation of benefits, you're going to see how much the provider charged. You're going to see if they were in the network, how much it was discounted, how much they got paid, and how much you might owe. And you can put all that number together, and then you're going to find out what a lab might cost, what a surgery might cost, what a emergency room visit might have cost. What you don't see typically is the itemized billing statement that was generated by the hospital. That's usually benign to you. That is sent electronically typically to the health insurance company, and then they do their little song and dance and discount it, assuming the provider was in a network. And then they come out with the explanation of benefits. So you never see the breakdown of everything that the hospital gave them. You only see what the end result was. And that's troubling too, because I will tell you, if you did try to find out that you wanted, let's say you needed knee surgery, not a knee replacement, just a simple knee surgery to clean out your knee, and it was going to cost, you heard it was going to cost $10,000 or $11,000, but that's what you heard you wanted to find out. If you brought the codes and the doctor's name and the NPI number and a few other things to the table and told the insurance company, and they would say, well, the knee surgery retailed for $10,000, but after the discounts, the doctor's only going to get $4,000, you could find that out. But the statement that's generated by the doctor is much longer. And if by chance, when you did your homework and you thought you did your due diligence and you said, wow, this is great, it's $10,000, but I'm only going to owe $4,000 and the insurance company's going to cover $3,000 of that, so I'm only going to have to pay $1,000. This is a really good deal. I got great insurance. You might. But what if the doctor discovers that there's another problem that he or she did not anticipate? Certainly there was no way for you to anticipate it. And suddenly that $10,000 medical bill goes to $30,000. You're going to be surprised. There was no way for you to know that. And part of the problem that you've got is that you now have upwards of 50,000 procedure codes that you have to navigate. 50,000 procedure codes, which are called CPT codes. I think CPT stands for something, but just know they're called CPT 10 codes. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, they were called CPT 4, and there were about 10,000 codes. After the Affordable Care Act was passed, they went to 50,000 codes and subcodes. So you literally could have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary code for one diagnostic expense. And in my example with the knee surgery, you could go down this path where the doctor didn't know, could not have anticipated, or maybe he had an idea in the back of his mind that something could happen, but he wasn't going to bother you with it because you and him had, or you and her never had that conversation about what things were going to cost because you thought you had good insurance and you did your due diligence and got what you thought you needed, so you didn't think about the oh by the way clauses. And then you get surprised with a $30,000 bill. Now it's still going to get discounted, but maybe instead of owing $1,000, now you owe $5,000. You're not going to be a happy camper. The transparency rules that are being developed it's going to take, I don't want to say a generation, but it's going to take some time to get through the moving parts here. is that it's hugely complicated because of what I just said. Things can change in the middle of a procedure. Or a doctor could say in the office, we're going to also run these tests on top of the CBC blood panel that we're going to do. We're going to run these tests also, just so you know. They never tell you what it's going to cost. By the way, they very rarely check to make sure some of that stuff is actually covered. I have seen situations where the employee has been blindsided. They were told a test was going to be done, but the physician never called the insurance company to get it pre-approved or make sure the code was covered. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the code drives the wagon. The code, which is the CPT-4 code or the CPT-10, and what's called the diagnostic code or the ICD-9 code, which I think is now ICD-10 also. There's 10,000 of those codes, by the way, those diagnostic codes. The diagnostic code and the procedure code have to line up. If they don't, the whole claim is quashed, and everything is not covered. Literally, the whole thing is not covered. And you might get an explanation of benefits. Please read the footnote. You didn't have it not covered. It's typically what's going to happen is that there's going to be a footnote at the bottom that says, basically, we need more information from your physician. We've reached out to him. Well, stay tuned. But most people don't look at that. They look at that and go, I wasn't covered. What the heck's going on? They first call the insurance company, which they should, or they call the broker, which happens in my office a lot. And then I take a step back. Let me look at it. I see the footnote. I'm like, okay, let's call the insurance company and find out what's going on. And then they tell you, we've asked the doctor for more information. Now, once that information is promulgated, then they make a decision. And if the doctor didn't check with the insurance company, it's possible something that you thought was supposed to be covered or should have been covered is not going to be covered. It is the bottom of the hour. It is 6:30. This is 101.5 FM WLCB Radio, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back after these short messages. So come right back. Phone number here is 262-342-6588. Got a lot more to cover on Your Insurance Corner. My name is Bill Miksch, president of WDMA Financial Group. We'll be right back.